Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Schmidt, and welcome into the Science of Surfing live stream. And we are joining you today from sunny California. And we're going to be talking to you today all about the history of surfing as well as the science behind how it all works. Now, like I said, we're standing here in California. We're actually going to be joining you from a couple of different locations today. Our first location is from Seacliff State Beach, which is a couple of miles east of where I am currently standing right now. And they're going to be coming to us there's going to be a couple people coming to us from there. Molly, Lily, Marika, all sorts of different people. And then I am going to be joining you live pretty much all day with a couple of different guests from Wilder Ranch State Park, but more specifically from 4 Mile State Beach, which is where I am currently standing, where the waves are breaking back behind me and the sun is shining down on us. Now, as we get started here, we're going to first be joined by Mike Groen, and he is going to be talking to us all about the history of this area as well as the history of surfing in this area. So let's bring him on. How's it going, Mike? How you doing today?
I'm going great. It's great to be out here. Appreciate you having me.
Well, so Santa Cruz has a pretty rich history of people being in this area, but who were the first people who have been living here?
So today we're standing at Wilder Ranch at 4 Mile State Beach, which is the unceded territories of the Awaswa-speaking people known as the Chitoni, who stewarded these lands and coastlines since time immemorial. Unfortunately, due to the legacies of colonialism, there are no known survivors of these people. However, there are neighboring tribes who continue their stewardship practices, which persisted for thousands of years in this area, building a really rich, resilient, and sustainable, healthy coastline. There are groups continuing those practices to ensure that the Awaswa-speaking people are not forgotten and that their legacy of management and maintenance and relationship to this area is continued into the present.
So you mentioned a little bit about the relationship. What is their relationship to this space, to this land?
It's a great question. It spans millennia. So archaeological evidence in this part of California reaches back thousands and thousands of years and documents a really close connection with coastlines and shorelines and offshore resources. We see native people managing the landscape with fire to increase productivity and resilience. We see harvesting of shellfish and fish and kelp forest resources that spanned thousands of years, but had largely sustainable practices evidenced in the types of resources we're seeing in the archaeological record. There's also native people here today who are continuing these practices, doing monitoring and a lot of coastal work and work on our parks, on our grasslands and forests. The Alma Mutsun Tribal Band has a coastal stewardship program, a fire program, and a native plant propagation program where they're caring for all of these resources in these areas. So it stretches back into time, it's active in the present, and it is continuing into the future to build a more resilient ecosystem and environment that we live in today.
Yeah, so managing the land seems to be an important part of how these people are still connected to the land today and a part of their relationship. So what are some of those technologies that they're currently using today that actually allow them to manage the land?
It's a great question. One, as I mentioned before, is the use of fire to manage landscapes. We've seen through California in the last few decades the devastating effects of fire suppression and putting out fires and not allowing for healthy fire to move through environments and burn off a lot of pest species, buildup of woody debris that can lead to these bigger disastrous wildfires. Native people in California and in this area specifically were using fire as a eco-engineering tool to maintain habitats and landscapes and maintain open coastal grasslands. We also see on the coast that people were harvesting shellfish and fish of a specific size that wasn't the smallest or the largest in the population, more medium-sized, allowing younger members of the population to reach reproductive viability and the older members to continue replenishing the stock of the population. And this is a long-term sustainable practice and is evidenced over thousands of years. So there's this close connection to managing terrestrial resources with an eye for the future and balancing out ecosystems, and the same thing is evidenced in marine resources.
So obviously a rich history with different technologies used to help manage the land, rich relationship. How do you, or what do you want people to take away when they come out and get to experience these parks, places like 4 Mile, Wilder Ranch, Seacliff, all of these different places of natural beauty around California?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of potential answers. You know, we think about technologies through time that people are using here, from nets to capture small schooling fish, to pry bars made out of whale bones to pull up abalone, and fish hooks made out of shell. But we also see tule boats that people were using in the past to navigate the waters around here, to enter the coastline and to exit, and to harvest fish and to explore the coasts as many people do today. Thinking about that rich legacy of technology used, we also see a bunch of technologies in the present, from drone mapping and environmental DNA testing and water quality monitoring and 3D mapping of the intertidal zone. So thinking about how closely people are related to a place and how much they care about it, we really can get the sense of, you know, thinking about our relationship to a place through time and the impact that we have on it. Are we stewards? Are we trying to relate to a place in a way that we think of all the resources around us as kin, or things that we're just trying to extract? And I think that the indigenous perspective, especially here, is to care for and steward things, and use traditional technologies and use modern technologies to get a better understanding of all of the environmental issues that we face. And I think that as citizens and as the public, we can think about those things too, you know. And it doesn't just go so far as, you know, leave only footprints, take only pictures, but pay attention to your surroundings and think about issues that you could maybe help address, that you could, you know, reach out to folks and do grassroots cleanups and organize things with the state and help us manage our resources better, and kind of think about long term, not just what our lives are going to be like, but, you know, successive generations.
So it sounds like you have a real passion for these places. You really care about places like Wilder Ranch. What really got you into being with state parks? What brought you out to places like this, and what keeps you kind of caring for it and coming back?
Yeah, I like being outside, and this ain't a bad way to spend a day working. But in the broad scope of things, I'm really interested in time depth and trying to, you know, we live this short life on this planet, and people have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and the earth has been here for billions of years. And to try to situate yourself, you know, on this big rotating globe in time and think, how have things come before me? How are they going to persist after me? Am I going to leave the world a better place? Can we learn things from the past and apply them to the present to sculpt a more sustainable, resilient, beautiful future? Those are things that are interesting to me and inspiring, and you know, pique the curiosity. And so, yeah, doing archaeology, working with tribes, working with natural resource managers, working with the public, trying to figure out how we can all share a vision like this that makes us not just feel like more connected to the place we're in right now, but like the whole scope, the arc of the human experience here, and, you know, not become immortal in that way, but be able to see the future and see the past and find yourself in it and enjoy things a little bit. Maybe that's what drives some of the passion.
Well, I love that answer. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the First Peoples who are on the land here. We are now going to go over to one of our other state parks, Santa Cruz Mission State Historic Park, where they're going to give us a brief history on how the first surfers actually got to Santa Cruz in general. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
No, it's not working.
Well, we appear to be having some technical difficulties, so if you just hang with us here for just a second, we should hopefully be back up and running in just 1 minute. So it sounds like, unfortunately, we're not going to be uh, So we're experiencing some technical difficulties, as this is the first time that we have been out here attempting to do something like this. So unfortunately, the video from the mission isn't working right now. So we're actually going to invite Mike Groen back on, if you wouldn't mind joining us again, to talk a little bit about the history of the surfing here in Santa Cruz. So are we good to go? Yeah, sweet. All right. So history of surfing in Santa Cruz. I know that it started here with a couple of princes, but can you expound a little bit upon that and how it actually ended up in Santa Cruz?
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on. Fancy seeing you here again. So, yeah, there's a rich history in Santa Cruz, for the past 100+ years of a wide variety of different characters coming through. We have the development of the wetsuit and all kinds of different interesting proliferations of surfing culture around here. But it all started back in the late 1800s when there was 3 Hawaiian princes who were attending a military boarding school in San Mateo, and they came over to Santa Cruz visiting a family friend and were staying with them, and they saw these perfect waves just reeling in right off of the San Lorenzo River mouth over by Cowles. And so there were redwood planks that were being milled up in the San Lorenzo Valley, kind of near where I live, actually, up on Clear Creek. And these are big 15-foot planks that were brought down to the coast and then finished in the style of a Hawaiian olo, which is a big 15-foot plank, which was ridden by Hawaiian royalty. So it was fitting for these princes. And they paddled out on a sunny day in July, I believe it was 1885, and surfed the river mouth off the San Lorenzo. The wharf wasn't there at the time, so the break would have been slightly different, but still you would have had nice point break rolling in off of Cowles and some nice waves off the river mouth as well. And this was the first landfall of surfing in America. So Santa Cruz is home to the first surfing in America. It could be hypothesized that perhaps people using Thule boats coming into the ocean or coming out of the ocean had to be aware of tides and wave action and might have caught a little pulse of the swell once or twice and got a little assistance on the way back to the shore. But in terms of the way that we think of surfing today, standing up and shaping boards, this is in some ways where it all started in California, just right off the coast here, just a little bit southeast of us.
So as kind of time continued on, when did surfing really start to become popular in not just Santa Cruz, but in California in general?
Yeah, you see, the coast of California is host to a wide variety of different waves and different surf cultures, from Southern California to the Central Coast, further Northern California. You have a lot of different wave qualities, different seasons, different temperatures of the water. So things like the development of wetsuits are necessary some places, not so much others. You see a big population in Southern California in the 20s, 30s, 40s, really kind of developing different technologies for board building. A lot of it coming off of the military industrial complex, really the technology that was used for boats and various things were then applied to surfboards. You get surf clubs being formed. Obviously the movie Gidget led to a big popularization of surf culture and maybe a slight romanticism of it. In Santa Cruz, you've got the legacy of Jack O'Neill developing the first wetsuit and a number of different surf contests and pros coming out of here, and a kind of dyed-in-the-wool community surfing heavy waves in the winter with minimal suits to protect them and warm up. We've got, like I'm saying, such a tremendous variety, kind of an embarrassment of riches of waves around here, from southern coast to the northern coast of Santa Cruz. In terms of culture, where it will go forward, I think we're seeing a lot of hot young Groms, a lot of excited people that are taking on surfing as not just like a legacy they inherited from their family, but who are getting into it later in life and finding a way to explore the coast that way. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming back on and joining us here yet again, and helping us overcome our technical difficulties.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are now going to be going over back to Seacliff, and we are going to be now learning a little bit about how tides and the ocean actually moves and works. And this is what really is the beginning of how you propel a surfboard down a wave. So it seems like we're still having a few technical difficulties with some of our other stuff going on, but that is totally okay. We're going to move ahead here while our techs in the background keep working on and solving the issues that keep happening. Right now, we're actually going to bring on one of our state lifeguards. His name is Aaron. Aaron, would you come over here and join me? Would you mind introducing yourself and what you do here at Wilder Ranch?
Morning. So my name is Aaron Bonin. I'm a California State Parks Lifeguard 2, and I work in Santa Cruz. We're up at 4 Mile today, which was one of our North Coast beaches. That's part of Wilder Beach, and I'm just excited here to talk to you guys.
Sweet. So would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do out on the ocean out there, what you're doing on the beaches here?
So as a lifeguard, we have a couple different responsibilities. Primarily, it's water safety. So it starts with prevention. So we like to educate the public on the dangers of the ocean and at the beach. And then we also are a responsive agency at the same time. So if there is some sort of a water emergency, like people getting caught in rip currents, getting hit by waves, we will actually enter the water and rescue them. Another one of our responsibilities is EMS. So a lot of us are trained up to the EMT level or public safety first aid. And so any sort of medical emergency that occurs on any of the state parks in Santa Cruz and within the state, we will respond to and aid those people.
So what are some ways that people can help keep themselves safe while out on the water, while surfing, while being in the kind of cold California ocean?
Right. So one of the first things you guys can do is if you see an open lifeguard tower, you see a lifeguard truck on the beach, please come talk to us and ask us questions if you're curious. We're more than happy to come talk to everybody and educate them on the dangers of the ocean. And then further than that, you can do your own research to learn about rip currents. One of the very simple things that we like to teach people is just to identify rip currents, which would be kind of like that flat water where the waves aren't primarily breaking. All that water likes to funnel into those areas and rush out like a river. So we try to keep little kids and people who are inexperienced in swimming to stay out of those areas and even entering in that spot on the beach. So if you're able to do your own research or come talk to lifeguards, that's one of the best things you can do to prepare yourself.
And so you said people while they're on the beach playing can help protect themselves. While surfers are in the water, what is one of the ways that they, or what are some of the ways that they help protect themselves while out on the waves?
So in Santa Cruz, the water is a little bit colder. Like right now, it's probably low to mid 50s. So most people wear wetsuits. I'd say 99% of the people wear wetsuits. And those are good for two reasons. One is to keep people warm and to keep all their muscles warm so they're able to move well and swim well. And at the same time, it floats them. So the rubber that's in wetsuits is actually going to help your buoyancy. And it's actually going to keep you afloat.
Is there anything that you want people to be really thinking about while they're out on the beaches, while they're out in the water surfing, that would help keep them safe?
That comes back to just education. Again, if you see one of us on the beach, we're more than happy to come talk to you. Try to do some research on the area that you're going to. Be cognizant of, how far help might be away, how far the parking lots, and if there's beach access, we're able to come help you guys. So just do your research on where you're going and try to educate yourself.
And lastly, what really got you into being a lifeguard? What brought you into being with California State Parks?
So for me, it all started with the junior lifeguard program. I did it down at Twin Lakes ever since I was 8 years old. It's a great program. We have multiple of them throughout the state. And I think that's a great introduction for people to get into ocean safety specifically. And then, further down the line, I decided I really wanted to help people as a career. And so it just kind of merged perfectly. And I get to be outdoors. I get to enjoy the ocean. I get to teach people and I get to help people in their worst moments of their life. So it's been a great experience.
Well, thank you for coming and talking to us a little bit about what you do today and how you're helping keep people safe out on the water. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. See you out there.
Thank you. So we're now going to move on with the program here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about wave science and how waves work with a couple of different people here. The first one that is going to be talking with us is Scott Shepard, and he is going to be talking to us a little bit about the different wave breaks and things that you'll actually experience out on the ocean. So, Scott, can you introduce yourself for us?
Sure. Hi, Kevin. How's it going? Thanks for having me. My name's Scott Shepard, and I'm an interpreter here in Santa Cruz with California State Parks. Happy to be here today.
Glad to have you here. So could you tell us about the different wave breaks that you're going to experience, not just here at 4 Mile, but up and down the coast of California?
Absolutely. I mean, it's difficult to talk about wave breaks as just kind of a lump sum because each break is really unique and it's based on a variety of different environmental factors that come into play that make waves break the way that they do. So here today at 4 Mile, we're right behind us looking at what would be considered a rock reef point break. So as waves come in, as swell comes in from the Monterey Bay, wherever it may have been generated by wind, by storms out in the ocean, it comes closer to shore and those waves experience drag on the bathymetry, or which is essentially the topography underneath the water. That drag causes the wave to stand up, and when it becomes top heavy, it breaks. So because of this point that we see right here, it's more likely to break closer to the rocks and in this direction, which as a surfer, you would call that a right, despite the fact that when you look at it from the beach, it appears to be breaking to the left. That's because as you pop up on that board and you're ready to ride that wave, you're going to be turning to the right and carving to keep yourself in an area of the wave that's going to generate as much power and speed as possible.
So we've got a point break. You talked a little bit about reef break as well. But I know that there are other places where waves don't come up as high. They stay a little bit lower and they can be a different type of surf. I believe it's called a beach break. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that waves don't break steeply on beach breaks, because a lot of beach breaks end up having what's called a shore break, and that can be caused from an abrupt change in depth underneath the water. So if you go from a really deep location to a really shallow location on a beach, then you're going to have a really quick breaking wave that'll break really steeply. But yeah, you're right. There are beach breaks as well. And our lifeguard, who was just on screen with us a moment ago, was talking a little bit about rip currents. We also have longshore currents, which are really common at beach breaks, and those can help influence how waves are breaking. So he was mentioning a rip current. Would you mind if I brought up a whiteboard to show a quick diagram of what that kind of looks like?
Of course.
Awesome.
Of course. So let's we're going to bring up a whiteboard here.
So I'm going to hold this right here so everybody at home can see it.
All right.
So a rip current would be formed if this is the shoreline here. The water is coming in from the ocean all at once. And as it breaks up onto the shoreline, it needs the wave to get back out. So what it actually does is it digs a hole in the sand that can create like a phenomenon similar to a river. So as water comes in towards the shore, it gets sucked out really quickly in this area. It's not going to take you all the way to China, though, or the other side of the Pacific Ocean. Instead, it's going to stop at a place called the head. And what's really interesting about rip currents is that this head may move from side to side. It may, change its location over the course of the day as the sand is moved underneath the water based on that, change in hydrodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
A longshore current is a little bit different, where, I don't know, Kevin, if you've ever been at the beach and you get out in the water here, you got your friends here on the beach, right? And you think you're right in front of them. You turn back a moment later and you're all the way over there. Have you ever had that happen before?
Yep.
So what you're experiencing is a longshore current. And that happens when storms are generated out in the ocean. That sends swell in towards the beach. And that swell kind of moves directionally to the side until eventually you find yourself over here. What's interesting about that is you never know, there might be a rip current right there again, where you'll find yourself moving along that longshore current, and before you know it, you're in deeper water than you expected to be in. So surfers can benefit from understanding what's going on underneath the water to theorize and hypothesize and predict where waves are going to break and how they're going to break. So we talked a little bit about the point break, we talked a little bit about the beach break, and then similarly with a reef break, that's not just coral reef. Reef can refer to anything that's underneath the water.
So rocks,
stones,
okay.
A variety of different types of things that might influence the way that waves are breaking. Does that help to make some sense there?
That does help. So we've got these different kind of breaks. Now, when you're actually out on the water, what kind of wave break are you looking for as a surfer?
So typically as a surfer, you're looking for a wave that's going to break consistently and predictably. So you're going to be able to know specifically where you want to sit in the water to catch that wave. So oftentimes the premier location where the wave is breaking is called the peak. So you want to paddle out somewhere where you're close to the peak so that you can catch that wave as early as possible. And that gives you the longest possible ride. A lot of the time you might be trying to catch a wave on the shoulder, depending on how steeply the waves are breaking, which is a little bit farther out from the peak. But the location where you're sitting in the water and waiting for those waves to break is called the lineup. And the lineup is going to be different depending on the type of wave that you're riding and the location where you're riding those waves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, we've talked about the different kind of breaks. Are there certain locations that have really famous breaks across California?
Well, Santa Cruz is definitely notable for a variety of different kinds of waves. I'm struggling to remember the exact phrasing that Mike used when he was on board, but it can be considered almost embarrassing how lucky we are to be in a place where there's such a variety of different kinds of waves and a diversity of surfable waves. So Santa Cruz is definitely one of those places. There's certainly breaks all up and down the coast that are notable and unique. I don't want to put any of them particularly on blast, but we're lucky in the state of California to have over 280 California state parks, many of which are state beaches and are home to some really incredible waves, such as San Onofre State Beach. Down in Southern California, San Clemente State Beach also has some great waves for body surfing, knee boarding, boogie boarding, all different kinds of wave riding that you might be interested in doing out there in the water.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us today about the different wave breaks and how that all works. I believe we're now going to go to our next segment with one of our local surfers here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different kinds of technology that you use while out on the water. So let's bring in Colby now.
Hello, good to see you guys. Hello.
How's it going, Colby? Can you introduce yourself for everyone?
Yeah, my name is my
Colby.
name's Colby, and I really enjoy surfing all of the amazing breaks here we have in Santa Cruz, and we use some very specific equipment for this region of California.
So, obviously, what you're holding is kind of the first piece of equipment. What kind of surfboard do you have with you today?
I currently have a fish or a shortboard. The fish is really distinct by the tail, and it also is two fins. So we would call that a twin fin. It is usually designed for a point break or smaller waves, which really works well around here at the breaks we have in Santa Cruz.
So what are some other kinds of surfboards that you could ride, though?
Yeah, there's a variety of surfboards to ride. There's longboards, which are boards up to 9 feet to even 10 feet long. And there's shortboards that are more for high performance surfing that you'd see professional surfers riding. And there's mid-lengths, the in-between boards that can really range a variety of waves and a variety of different surfing.
And if I could add, Kevin, surfing technology has progressed significantly over the past few hundred years. In the 1960s, we had what was called the shortboard revolution that really significantly changed how boards were being made, what they were being made out of, how much they weighed, their volume, their buoyancy, their shape. And today we're seeing a lot of different kinds of revolutions in surfing in the form of stand-up paddleboarding, which is an incredibly popular sport. In the early 2010s, that was one of the most fastest growing sports in North America. We also have a lot of folks that you'll see out riding foil boards these days, which is essentially like having an airplane underneath your surfboard, which literally creates lift when tapping into the energy of the wave and rises you up above the surface of the water and allows you to surf in a really unique and different way than you would on a shortboard or a longboard or a mid-length that was described. And then not to leave out our friends on sponges out there or other kinds of boards. There's obviously boogie boarding, there's inflatable surf mats, there's surf kayaks, There's all kinds of different ways to ride waves out here, not just in California, but around the globe. And depending on the type of wave that you're riding, as Colby was saying, you might choose a different kind of board. As a surfer, if you have a variety of different boards, as you might have your garage filled with boards, that's called your quiver. So you might stock your quiver with a variety of different kinds of boards so that you can go and explore and experience different kinds of waves. And as you progress, change the style in which you're choosing to ride.
So you've mentioned quite a lot of different ways to ride waves there. What are the main materials that we see surfboards being made out of these days, Colby?
Yeah, so the two main materials would be polyurethane and epoxy. And that refers to the resin and foam being used to craft these boards. Very, very strong material, but can take a beating over time, and they float very well.
I'd also say, as we were talking about the evolution of surfing technology, there's really a push these days to try to create surfboards out of more sustainable materials. So people are looking, towards history, as Mike was talking about before, those Hawaiian olos that were created by milled redwoods from our region. People are utilizing all different kinds of wood. People are utilizing bamboo. I've even seen surfboards shaped out of discarded cigarette butts or trash that's been collected from the beach. So there's a lot of innovation out there in the surfing community and a lot of engineering that comes into play to create a surf craft that's capable of riding, a variety of different kinds of waves.
So we've got all these different kinds of waves that we can ride. It sounds like we have a lot of different kinds of boards that we can ride. What's the advantage of one board over another on, the different types of wave breaks that we have out here?
Yeah, so the construction of the board really depends on the speed it will go down the wave, the way it bottom turns, the way it turns off the top. All of these things really matter when it comes to the construction of the board, and that directly relates to the wave you surf.
Yeah, and I would just add, there's a variety of different, pieces that come into play around the design and structure of a surfboard. To break it down to the bare minimum and the basics, it comes to volume, it comes to buoyancy, it comes to surface area. So a board that has a lot more volume and a lot more surface area is going to be capable of being paddled at a higher speed with less energy input. So in order to catch a wave, you want to be able to match the speed with which the wave is actually moving through the water. Mm-hmm. So a longer board might be advantageous if you're surfing really small waves with not a lot of energy. A shorter board might be advantageous if you're surfing a larger wave. But that being said, you might choose to surf a short board with a lot of volume, similar to the fish that Colby has here today, if you're choosing to surf smaller waves. Or you might want to choose to surf a longer board with just a little less volume than you would typically if you're surfing really big waves. Like we have Mavericks just up the coast here, still within the boundaries of the Santa Cruz district of California State Parks up in the Half Moon Bay area. And you're likely to see people riding much longer boards, which are often referred to as guns or big wave boards. And that just allows you to catch that wave earlier on before it breaks so that you're in a safer place as you're riding down the face of that wave.
Well, so we've got surfboards, but I'm also seeing on Colby here a lot of other different pieces that go along with it. We've mentioned a couple different things. So what are the other pieces of technology that you bring with you out onto the water?
Probably the biggest piece of technology and really specific here in California, especially the region of Santa Cruz, is the wetsuit. We here in Santa Cruz wear a 4.3. That refers to the thickness of the wetsuit. And when it comes wintertime and it's really cold, some people will wear a 5.4 with a hood and also booties because the feet get really cold as well. And I'm currently wearing 5 mil booties out here because the water is still pretty cold. Even though it's June right now, we still need to be wearing wetsuits in the water.
So we've got wetsuits. I know wetsuits have a rich history here. Scott, can you tell us a little bit more about that history of wetsuits in Santa Cruz?
I can tell you a little bit about it. By no means am I an expert.
That's totally okay.
But just to build off of what Colby was saying, we refer to a wetsuit based off of the millimeters that are put into that wetsuit. This wetsuit is made out of, what are we saying, urethane or neoprene?
Yep.
Neoprene. So neoprene is a material that's made from oil, and it allows you to trap cold water in towards the source of your body. That cold water is then warmed by your own body heat and it stays in. So it's basically like an aquatic blanket. That 4-3 refers to 4 millimeters in the chest, 3 millimeters in the arms and legs. A 5-4 refers to 5 millimeters in the chest, 4 millimeters in the arms and legs. And a hood is literally a neoprene hood that you can fasten and cinch around your face to try to keep as much of your body heat in as humanly possible. But wetsuits were basically necessary in order to enjoy the waves that we have here in Santa Cruz, because you can expect the water to always be pretty cold. It's not going to get much warmer than, what would you say, Colby, like the low 60s?
Low 60s would be a great day here in Santa Cruz.
Probably like the end of August. If you're really, really lucky, it's a beautiful sunny day. You're going to get that low 60-degree water, but most of the time you're going to be a lot lower than that. And while that might not, really impact a person on land, when you're in the water, just the fact that that water has such it's so much more dense than the air, you're going to really feel the impact of that temperature on your body. So wetsuits were innovated by the O'Neill family, which are local here to Santa Cruz in the 60s, would you say?
Yeah, 60s.
60s. And that started with suits that were used for diving and for exploring farther out in the ocean. You're likely to see what's called a beaver tail wetsuit, which zips on the front. It has a long tail here, and you actually pull it through your legs and button it right here at the waist. But today, wetsuit technology has significantly evolved and improved. For a long time, the majority of wetsuits had a back zip. That was back in the 80s when you'd see a lot of day glow colors on the wetsuit from companies like Body Glove, Billabong, Quicksilver. And today, there's so many different companies, so many different things to choose from. I personally like to wear a wetsuit that has a chest zip, because then the water isn't going to get in from behind, and it's just easier to pull that up over the top. It might be a little bit tougher to get out, particularly when your hands are really cold in the wintertime. Taking that wetsuit off can be kind of a chore. But wetsuits, are definitely important to make sure that you're not just comfortable, but also safe out here in the water. So we encourage all you folks at home, get yourself a wetsuit if you're planning to get out here in Santa Cruz.
So I see some other things attached to Colby as well. We've got fins on the board. Can you tell me what the purpose for those fins are? You said you had a 2-fin board.
Yeah, I had a twin fin board, and the purpose of the fins is really for stability of the surfboard. It also helps create drive. And what I mean by drive is propelling you down the wave. The fins are really a crucial part of the surfboard to make it work and be able to surf the waves that we do.
Absolutely. So carving is a common activity that you're going to be seeing people engage in as they're surfing to try to stay in the area of the wave that has the most power, and to move and maneuver throughout the wave as much as possible. So without those fins, it would be significantly more difficult to do that. There are folks that ride finless surfboards, but it takes a lot more control, and you're not able to engage in the same types of maneuvers that you would be with a board with fins. And oftentimes in boards, you're going to see channels that are carved into that board. Colby and I were talking about this earlier today. Some of the technology is not necessarily purely theoretical. There is hydrodynamic engineering at play, but a lot of it requires trial and error. So you create a board, you shape it a certain way, you test it out, it works, it doesn't work, try something else.
So we've got channels carved into the bottom of the board. We got fins to help with drive and to help you turn on the wave. There's also this, looks like a rope coming off the back of your surfboard here. Can you tell me what that is used for?
Yeah, that would be called a leash. That is a very important piece of equipment for surfers. It allows your board to stay attached to you. And if you do fall on a wave, you're not losing your board into the rocks, destroying your board. But most importantly, it's a safety thing. If you're out in the water and you lose your board and the currents are strong and the waves are big, it is hard to swim in some of these situations. So having a good quality leash that is going to work in these conditions is really a crucial item to surfers.
So it's essentially a safety item.
I would agree. It's definitely a safety item, but not just for you, also for your board. Surfboards are pretty expensive. And if you're going to invest the time and money that's needed to get yourself a nice board, you want to keep it in good shape. So having a leash is one way to definitely do that. And like Colby was saying, it's definitely a way to help keep yourself safe as well. Leashes have also gone through, a technological revolution. And you'll see people that are riding out there unleashed, and typically those are going to be folks with a lot of experience that understand their limitations, understand what's going on in the water scientifically, and how they're going to be able to keep themselves safe and their board safe as well. So if you're just starting to surf, or if you're just learning to surf, you certainly want to have a leash, and you certainly want to understand your own personal limitations. So you want, like we always say, know before you go. Make sure that you're checking the surf conditions, checking the terrain conditions, checking the various ocean factors such as currents, temperatures, tides. And you also want to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling scared? And you want to check in with the people around you, because there's a lot of etiquette that comes into play, and you want to make sure that you're remaining respectful to all the folks out there in the water.
So the last thing before we get to etiquette here, because I do have a couple of questions about that. I've noticed on the other side of your board, there is a whole bunch of white stuff that the stand is sticking to. Would you mind telling me what that is?
Yeah, so that's going to be wax. This is a crucial for us to have our feet stick on the board. Basically, you would put a base coat of wax on, and then you would put the temperature of the water, which would be the temperature of the wax. You put that on top. You rub it in little circles or big circles, and you get what we kind of refer to as bumps on the board, and those bumps allow our feet to get grip on the surfboard.
So if you can imagine, Kevin, that surfboard, like we were talking about before, is coated with fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
That fiberglass, when wet, is incredibly slippery, much more so than your average sidewalk during a rainstorm. So creating texture on the top of that surfboard is really, really important to make sure that you're actually able to stand up and stay on. And we were talking about this again, wax has also evolved technologically. Way back in the day, you might have just used a candle from your living room, from your dining room, and that typically would have floated. A lot of the surf wax that you get today is specifically designed for surfing, and it's definitely not going to float. So if you're bringing water or wax out with you in the water, make sure that you have it stowed somewhere in your suit. Make sure that you're keeping track of it, because you want to be keeping that ocean clean as well.
So rewinding a little bit here, you had mentioned a little bit about etiquette, Scott. What is the etiquette out on the water? Is it used to help keep you guys safe? Is it used just as kind of a locals thing? What is it?
Well, there's a long history of etiquette in surfing. At the onset of surfing in Polynesian culture, there were caste systems at play. And if you were to cut someone off or drop in on someone who's already riding a wave who is a caste above you, you'd experience a significant punishment for that. And typically that would be in the form of, something physical. Unfortunately, you never know who's out in the water with you. And there are a lot of people out in the water who experience a really, really strong sense of ownership for that place. And it's easy to understand why. These places where we surf are incredibly beautiful. They are oftentimes environmentally pristine. They're oftentimes not incredibly safe for everyone, and it requires a significant amount of skill. It requires a significant amount of environmental and social awareness. So etiquette is really created in surf culture out of a necessity for personal safety, community safety, and safety of the environment. So there's a couple of rules that you want to understand when you're out there in the water surfing. The first one being, just to always be respectful. You don't want to be mouthing off or barking or talking trash to people that you don't know, because you might find yourself in a precarious situation. That's number one. The second one is you want to understand your physical location in relation to what we called the lineup earlier and in relation to how the waves are breaking. And if you'd allow me, I'd love to bring my whiteboard back on to talk about it a little bit. Colby, anything you want to add to that really quickly?
No, I think I'm all good on adding anything. Scott, you're doing a great job.
Thanks so much. So let's take this whiteboard, and I am going to draw a quick picture. So let's say this is 4 Mile and this is the land, and here's where we're standing. There's our friend Kevin with his nice flat hat on his head. I'm going to give him some ears. So there's Kevin standing on the beach, and there's 2 different peaks here at play at 4 Mile. One here that's on the outside that's breaking right off of that point. One here that's on the inside that's breaking on some bathymetry underneath the water there. I wanted to try to say a different word, but I don't want to say a word that I don't know. So if I'm right here at the peak and I'm getting ready to paddle to catch this wave to go to the right, and Kevin, let's say that Colby is sitting right here on the peak, which one of us has the right of way in that scenario?
If I had to take a guess, I would say maybe the person that's higher up on the wave. So the person at the peak.
Absolutely. So this person at the peak has the right of way. So if I take off and I turn in this direction, then Colby would need to understand that it wouldn't be appropriate for him to take off and turn in this direction as well. That would be called cutting somebody off. Sometimes people use the word burning. You might have burned somebody out there. So that's certainly not what you want to be doing out in the water. Let's say that I am paddling back out on my surfboard and I'm right here, and now Colby's about to catch this wave right here at the peak. Which direction do you think I want to try to paddle?
I would say away from the way the wave is breaking.
Yeah, so typically what we say is you want to paddle through the wave rather than around the wave. So if Colby's dropped in and he's paddling this way, I'm going to just go right there, go right through that white water. If I tried to paddle in this other direction around this way, then Colby would have to maneuver around me, and that's not necessarily being respectful of his right of way. Colby might have been waiting out there in the water for an hour, depending on how crowded the ocean is. So you want to make sure that you're following that rule of etiquette as well. What other kind of things are you wondering about etiquette?
Well, I was just wondering if there's unwritten rules, things like that, things that just help kind of keep surfers safe while out on our waters, really.
Well, one of those unwritten rules that I mentioned before is definitely knowing your physical limitations. So I mentioned this a moment ago, but before I paddle out, I try to think about a few different things. One of them being ocean factors. So what's happening with the tides? What's going on with the currents? What's going on with the temperature in the water? Another one is going to be terrain factors. So are there rocks under the water? Is there a reef? Is there a point? Is there rip currents, which would be technically terrain factor because it's based on, again, that hole or that river being formed in the sand. Another one is going to be weather factors. So is it sunny? Is it windy? Is it raining? Is it cold? All of those different kinds of things are going to come into play. And then lastly are the human factors. So how crowded is it? Are there a lot of people out in the water right now? Are you in a place where you know the community personally, where you've gotten to know those folks over time? Are you in a place where you don't know the community, where you're new, where you don't necessarily have the experience? Or are you afraid? Are you nervous? Are you self-conscious? Got a little spider on your face there, Kevin. I'm going to be a nice guy and get that for you.
Thank you.
So those are some of the things that you really want to consider before you're paddling out in the water, and that's going to influence the way that you're experiencing the ocean, influence the way that you're surfing. It's going to also influence the behavior that you choose to engage in out in the ocean.
Well, thank you for taking this time to talk to us, Scott. We're going to start wrapping things up here, but we just wanted to check in and make sure, see if there were any questions that myself or Scott might be able to answer for you. The first one is, how did you get started as a new surfer? Where did you get started?
So me personally, I started surfing when I was about 7 years old, and it's always good to start young. Particularly because when you start young, you bounce back a little bit more. But if you're starting, later in life and you're really excited and interested in surfing, understanding some of those factors at play, whether they be weather, ocean, terrain, or human factors, are really, really important. And I would recommend that people start out with a lesson. So here in Santa Cruz, there are a whole bunch of different surf schools all across our region that are more than capable of providing you with a meaningful experience, with an enriching experience, and an educational experience that's going to propel you in your physical ability, in your environmental awareness, and it's also going to help you, progress more quickly. If you're a kiddo, get out there and join our California State Parks Junior Lifeguards programs. If you're excited about getting out there and surfing, being a junior lifeguard is an amazing way to start building your comfort in the water, to start building, your environmental awareness, as I mentioned before. But I hope that answers the question. Does that answer that for you, Kevin?
I think that answers it for me. Do we have any other questions from the audience? No, it doesn't sound like it. So I just want to say really quickly, thank you, Scott. Thank you for joining us out here at Wilder Ranch at 4 Mile State Beach. Did you have any lasting things to leave us with before we head out for the day?
Sure. A couple of different things that I'd love to share before I head off screen is, one, folks, if you're coming out to the ocean, if you're coming out to the beach this summer, make sure that you're wearing sunscreen. Make sure that you're protecting yourself from the UV rays that we have out here, not just in California, but all over the globe. I personally am pretty fair skinned. As you can see, I have red hair underneath my hat here, and I'm personally really prone to sunburn. So a lot of surfers later in life experience, negative impacts of high levels of UV rays on their skin, high levels of UV rays on their eyes, on, the tops of their heads, all kinds of different places. So making sure that you're protecting yourself from UV rays is really important. I recommend a hat, a long sleeve shirt, maybe some zinc oxide, an ocean safe sunscreen, and a pair of sunglasses for sure. And the other thing that I want to share is that California State Parks is here to create safe and enriching recreational experiences for members of the general public. We're really caring for and protecting these lands, the natural, cultural, and historic resources that they hold, so that everyone can enjoy them. So I'd encourage you to come out to a California State Park, learn about the different ways that you can recreate out here. And if you're new to the community of surfing, then remember to, know your limitations, be respectful, plan ahead and prepare. And if you're, a long-time surfer who enjoys the ocean out here in California State Parks, I encourage you as well, to be kind, to be respectful, to be helpful to those new surfers out there in the water. Because at least as a California State Park staff member and representative, the physical and emotional safety of our visitors is our top priority. And everyone can play a role in making sure that that's possible. So thank you so much, Kevin, for the opportunity to come out here and join you to share a little bit about the science and history of surfing in our region. I might be ready to go paddle out in a couple of minutes. It's looking like it's going to be pretty fun.
Well, go have fun out on the water there, Scott. We really appreciate you joining us. So thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Kevin.
for those of you who are still with us here at the very end as we wrap up here, I believe we're going to try and post some of the videos from today that we were unable to share with you on our social media channel. So please make sure to follow us on all the different Santa Cruz State Park social media channels. And we look forward to seeing you out in our parks and joining us out on the water here soon. So from 4 Mile Beach, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Hey, we're recording. Okay.